discussion. Sorry, you got me off track. This is meant to be set up, but there's a really interesting. So a lot of folks, when from our position, they keep casting us like we're anti-trans or anti-gay. It's like, no, we're pro-science. Like, and this is what the science says. It really has nothing to do with my personal feelings, which by the way are very positive towards transgender and gay people. It's really about the evidence. But unfortunately, our opposition seems to want to paint us and really anyone, even medical doctors and the Endocrine Society, if you don't agree with this, you must be transphobic. It's like, wait, this is an issue of evidence. Anyway, all right, so activist organizations, there's the big three that really were influenced by these ideas of Kinsey, Money, and Harry Benjamin. And Planned Parenthood, was very interested, starting with birth control, did believe in eugenics, and that doesn't mean, just because you believe in eugenics doesn't mean you're entirely, discredit it. You can have other good ideas, but the point is, that's not a great idea. And she was, interested in, she agreed with the idea you could forcibly sterilize people, particularly folks that had like special needs. She was in favor of that. And the big takeaway there is Planned Parenthood believes we're sexual from the day we were born. I think a lot of people would disagree with that, including Dr. Goonan. Many of you know I presented with her last time, and I asked her about this. Is there any evidence that no, there's no evidence that kids are sexual from the day they were born? They do get erections in the womb if you're a boy, but that's a neurological random thing. There's no sexual content in the womb, right? And they pee all over doctors all the time. She tells me in the office, it has nothing to do with sexuality. It's just like a physiological reaction. So anyway, that's the belief from Planned Parenthood. And then Mary Calderon, again, these folks are all kind of related, right? So she was director of Planned Parenthood, and she's founded SECUS, which is the Sexual Education Information Council of the United States. That sounds very governmental, but it's just a nonprofit. It really has no authority. Again, all these organizations, they're not a government authority. They're just advocacy groups of some sort. And she believed there's an urgent need to break from traditional ideas, kind of like Kinsey, especially how it was taught to young people, less emphasis on disease and pregnancy, more on physical pleasure. And the current slogan, I kid you not, is sex ed for social change. So if you go to the SECUS's website, you'll find things about like social justice issues and other like political issues, but not, like the birds and the bees, right? You'll find birds and bees stuff, but you'll also find this very social justice-y kind of links on there as well. Which is their right, but I'm just saying, it's maybe combining issues that don't need to be combined, right? And it's a major influence in public schools, sex education today. Advocates for Youth also believes children are sexual even before birth, again, for the same reasons. Provides explicit lessons. If you want to go check them out, I'm going to show you some later. 3rs.org. So you can go look and see lessons specifically designed for Maryland. Doesn't mean they're necessarily used in all the classrooms in Maryland, but they specifically try to meet Maryland standards. And then it has a website that's associated with called Amaze. It's a YouTube channel. It has also very explicit, I'll show you some later, content on it. They launched an Abortion Out Loud series, which actually promotes abortion as normal. Regardless of your position on pro-life, pro-choice, I hope we would agree that abortion hopefully is not normal in people's lives, and hopefully it's something people don't want to get or just consider, kind of a normal thing that people go to. Hopefully it's something to be avoided, regardless, again, of your views on that. And that youth know what's best for our lives. I think a lot of us who have teenagers might question that our youth have that phrase judgment. And again, it encourages student activism for social justice issues. SDPS did sign an MOU with them. It has not been renewed, which I think is a good thing. But they did sign one to teach about condoms and other sex activities. All right, any questions on that? Sorry, a lot of content. I promise it slows down after the first couple of slides. Any questions? You had a great question. Any other questions?
No, not right now. Thanks.
All right, so GLSEN, this is the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network. I think I'm getting your abbreviation correct. And they advocate for LGBTQ students. They provide education materials. Been downloaded a lot, over 500,000 times. They advocate for safe spaces. And the point here is that the policy that SDPS has was copied from GLSEN's model policy, but the model policy literally has no scientific evidence in it at all, like not a single reference. And so that's our current policy, 443, and that's why the other form we talked about why we think we need to update to actually reflect the science. So that's GLSEN. Again, I'm not saying they're all bad, but the point is that it's a non-scientific policy, And you can look at these materials for yourselves and see if you agree that there are things that you would want your children to be taught. Obviously, depending on parents' values and things, you might like some stuff and not like it. I'm not trying to take a position what you should believe. I'm just telling you what they're doing, right? All right, so the idea, though, is comprehensive sex education, right, is what Maryland and Frederick County Public Schools are promoting. That differs from like abstinence-only sex education. There's a couple different kinds of sex education you can get, and obviously different parents are going to want different things, and at different ages probably, right? And really different based on your kid and their personality. I mean, that topic can be complicated, right? So what they believe that anyone that's in the realm, and all those three activist organizations are, anyone that's a supporter of this comprehensive sex education generally believes the following ideas, which is sexuality is a subject of primary concern for schools, so it's important enough to teach across the curriculum, so even embedding content like math, science, history, etc. And parents, if you do that, right, so if you embed something that is kind of putting in math class some sexual related content, parents actually don't have a legal right to opt out because it's not considered sex education. So people that want to get this into our schools, they can do that, and they have done that in Montgomery County. I don't know if any of you saw, there's been a big protest, like probably close to 1,000 people now at Montgomery County Board of Education. A lot of them from the Muslim community are saying this violates our religious beliefs. We don't really want our kindergartner to learn about same-sex relationships. We think that's too early. Nothing against people have it, but we just think it's too early, and it does violate our moral tradition. When the MCPS used to allow those parents, this is Montgomery County, used to allow them to opt out. They got so many complaints and so many requests for opting out that their answer, I kid you not, was to say, we're not going to let you opt out anymore. So many people want to opt out, we're going to stop your right for opting out. Which seems like the opposite of what I would have done, which is say, oh, maybe we ought to have like a curriculum for folks that want that in it, and a curriculum for folks that don't want that in it, and we could just keep the peace and parents could decide. Seems pretty like an easy solution. But they said, no, we believe in inclusive schools, and this is our view, is that everyone needs to have this, and you are no longer allowed to opt out. We will not allow it. So that's how it's gone in Montgomery County. I mentioned Montgomery County because they very well could come here where it's the same thing, right? Where you're going to get things that should be opted out, or have an option to opt out, or quite frankly opted more into. I've been on the record, I wrote in the paper and said, I think if parents want more LGBTQ stuff in their curriculum, that's great. Let them opt into a curriculum that does that, but also let the parents that don't want it to opt out, right? Just give everybody what they want, and then the controversy goes away. We don't have to have forums like this, right?
What would sex ed look like in math?
Yeah, so it depends. So some of the content in math could include things like word problems that might talk about gay marriage, for instance, something like that. Also in English, it's actually, that a lot of people wouldn't care about, but I would say, some people would, but some people wouldn't. But it's really like the English books. If you look at some of the English books where they will tell young kindergartners, well, you're a boy and you might actually be a girl and you might be transgender. That's problematic for a bunch of reasons I'll get into later in terms of developmental stages. But those are the types of things that parents, particularly Muslim parents in Montgomery County, are objecting to.
So, yeah, I'm not trying to belabor, I just want to understand.
You're asking all the right questions.
Yeah, so, because I don't think of like, if you have a book and it's about a family goes on a picnic in
Right,
a park,
right.
and it has two parents.
Right.
Are you calling that sex ed?
I'm not calling that sex ed. I'm saying there's a topic of sexuality that sometimes is not just they happen to be two moms, right? It's kind of the
So that wouldn't be,
right.
you would not consider that sex ed?
I wouldn't consider that just having a character with that. I would say it's material that some parents would rather not have their kindergartner.
But that's a different conversation.
Correct, yes,
Than
exactly.
sex ed. Okay,
Exactly,
thank
exactly,
you.
yeah. No, great clarification, I really appreciate that. And then the more info, the better, the younger children learn it, the better. So, the idea that there's just too much too soon sometimes is kind of lost on some of the advocates for comprehensive sex education. And then they actually say advocates for youth provide information even if the child doesn't ask for it, which actually violates what most psychologists will tell you. For young kids, the general recommendation is answer questions, don't push the information, right? So if they want to know where babies come from, give them a simple answer, right? Simple as they can answer, but don't push that on them. But Advocates for Youth actually says, yeah, including teaching 5-year-olds about sexuality, and of course I kid you not. And then in terms of moral standards, for folks that have a moral standard that says, we don't believe in condoms, or we don't believe in premarital sex, or whatever it might be, the general message, and it's mixed messages, is consent plus condoms is kind of the moral standard. So that's abstinence will be mentioned is the best protection against STDs. Good for that, and that's absolutely correct. But the overall message is that, obtaining consent and using condoms is kind of the standard for exploring your sexuality, and usually the message that goes along with that is something in the teenage courses is something along the lines of, only you can know when you're ready. Well, I question that, right? Because you're a teenager, you might not have the maturity to really know. So that's the message. And so again, whether you're for that or against that, my point is it's here, it's going to be in the curriculum. So if you are a parent that's more conservative, you might not like that, opinion you need to make. If you're a parent that isn't, that's fine. But the point is, for my view is, my personal view is, parents should basically have some say and be able to separate it. I really think you need stuff that's more explicit, and if you want that, that's great. And stuff that's maybe more traditional, parents should have an option for that. And then children have a right to question parents' morals, and parents have a duty to support them. Sort of, kind of. We all go through a questioning period, especially as teenagers. That's all normal. But the idea of Advocates for Youth is, to kind of liberate kids from their supposedly repressive parents who are, they're true advocates in my view, or actually the parents. And again, this message of only you can know when you're ready. So again, it's a problematic, especially if you're coming from a religious